Welcome to Radio KAL, the Superman podcast, brought to you by supermanhomepage.com, the number one Superman fan site in the world. This is our show number 113, lucky 113, released on May 28th, 2014. My name is Steve Eunice, and joining me is my good friend and co-host, Scotty V. Hey, Scotty.
Hello, Steve. Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Going well. Now, we've got a few things to talk about this month. It's been an interesting month in the world of Superman, with details on the new Batman v Superman movie coming out in 2016. We've got a title now. We've seen Ben Affleck in the costume. We've got all different things to talk about. Some big things happening in the comic books with the Superman Doom saga all happening. So quite a bit to get to this month.
Yeah, busy month. Surprisingly, there was a lot of film stuff. I was surprised so far in advance that we're getting so much information. I feel like there's been a lot of complaining that people haven't seen enough and things haven't been happening. The same kind of thing happened with Man of Steel, but we're much further away now, and I feel like we're getting much more.
Yeah, well, let's kick off with the title, as we've, for a long while now, we've been calling it Superman / Batman, as you're... we've heard you say many times before. We've been calling it Superman versus Batman, Batman versus Superman, Superman Batman movie. We've included other characters in the title just because there's so many things have been going on. But we know officially now that it is called Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Now, the V obviously stands for versus, but there's been a bit of conjecture about why not VS for versus, and there's a bit of... some theories behind that. What was your initial reactions to that title?
Well, obviously, I mean, the first thought you see is that it's Batman versus Superman, and then your mind kind of clicks back to the idea that you didn't read versus, you read V, and then you go, why V? It's kind of weird. So yeah, it seems like it's just a short way to stand for versus, which is odd because the title's long and cumbersome to begin with. I don't really think adding an S there would have made it too long and cumbersome if it's not that way already. But I've heard some things. I watched like a lot of the people who were commenting on last week's Speeding Bulletin. I watched the same AMC special where they talked about what it meant, and they mentioned the court cases. They mentioned how it's normally when the plaintiff's going against the defendant, they use V, and that's obviously why they did it and what it means, and maybe he's going to take him to court and that kind of thing. But obviously, it at least seems to stand for versus right now, and they may very well have said, well, in court cases, V stands for versus, so we can use V here, and I guess that's what they decided to do.
You know what my theory is on this?
I'd love to hear it.
It's actually a tribute to you.
Ah, well, I've heard lesser theories, so I'll go with that.
Scotty V, that's what the V stands for. I mean, it was obvious from the very get-go.
Oh, well... You're right. I just didn't want to seem too egotistical.
You didn't want to toot your own horn.
So I'm being humble with it and kind of letting it sit there for a while. But now that you brought it up, I totally agree.
But there has been some speculation or some theories about, in legal matters, someone who has a grievance against somebody else is the first person's name. So it's, say if it was Eunice v. Vinacomi, then it's me having the grievance against you as being, I'm the one who's bringing forward my argument against you, or I have a problem against, against what you've been doing, or whatever it might be. So, for Superman fans who, why does Batman's name get to go first? This is supposed to be Man of Steel sequel, Man of Steel 2. Why is Batman taking precedence over Superman in the title? I guess you can look at that as being a reason. Or you can just go alphabetically, Batman comes first. Or you can say Batman is more popular, so people are going to want to see Batman's name first and grab onto that first. I don't think it really matters, but for me personally, I like the idea of it, and the V in there kind of makes sense to me if you want to go with that theory that Batman, the story of this movie is the fact that Batman has a grievance against Superman and what happened in Man of Steel, and he's coming forward, taking umbrage against what happened, and that maybe Superman shouldn't be or taking, responsibility for the damage and everything that had gone on there. So I guess it's something that we can look at, and we won't really know until we do actually hear some kind of a outline as to what the movie's plot is.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you're going to go with the versus idea. I mean, those of you who know have heard many of my grievances with the idea of a Batman versus Superman, not the least of which that I haven't talked about much is they really shouldn't be fighting anyway. They should be working together based on what we know of them. But we also know that the movie parts of these comic book universes don't always jive exactly with what's going on in comic books, but plenty of times they've been almost adversaries, even though working for the same thing. And then other times they've been really close friends and confidants. So it's not like it's completely out of place that Batman would have a grievance or that Superman would have a grievance with Batman either way. And
it's almost like a cliche in comic books, isn't it? When the first meeting of characters, they always have a bit of a misunderstanding and aren't really sure about each other. I mean, they can't be best of friends without having met before. So it makes sense that in an origin movie about the two of them meeting each other, that they would be a bit wary of each other. They don't know anything other than what they've seen in the press, in the media. And so from Batman's point of view, all he knows is that here's this, super alien who's, caused a lot of damage, Metropolis, and supposedly he saved the world. But, Batman's very skeptical by nature and a bit mistrustful. So, and then on the other side of things, you've got Superman who he's heard about this urban legend of this, Dark Knight who, sets Gotham right using fear and standover tactics, and maybe he doesn't agree with the way he does things. And so obviously at first there's going to be a little bit of, I'm not sure about you, and, they might, like I said, it's a real comic book cliche where the two heroes, fight against each other, go up against each other, and then they realise that they're actually on the same side of justice, and the real villain is the guy who's behind the curtain, who's been pulling their strings.
Yeah, obviously, you're right. Everything you say in terms of it's been used before and meeting for the first time. And also the way Man of Steel set it up, not that it was purposely doing so, but if we take the theory that most people seem to have, and that is that Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne are going to be kind of coming together to try and rebuild things, or working separately to try and rebuild things, and then, of course, Lex blaming the alien and Batman being worried about the alien. It also makes a lot of sense, when you look at, I've always kind of disliked the really negative, distrustful, I'm better than all of you, so when you need me, give me a call, Batman. That's what over recent years has really soured me to the idea of the character. Yeah. But I've recently gotten caught up on the JL comics of the New 52, and their version of Batman is much. I haven't read any of the Batman standalone comics, but from what I'm seeing, the New 52 Batman is not exactly what he was before the New 52, and that is this guy who didn't trust anybody and was only there because he was needed. And it seems to me that this is a Batman that likes these people and that cares about Superman and that is interested in what's going on. So I can also see the idea from a standpoint of not knowing who Superman really is, just hearing about him and seeing about him for the first time, just like we all did when we watched Man of Steel. Not only was all that damage caused, but somebody like Batman could say, but on the other hand, he was in the middle of a fight with some people who are just as strong as him. What else could he do? So secondarily, I could see him saying, but seeing how much damage was caused by these rogue Kryptonians, what happens if Superman one day does become rogue? And then you get that whole thing where he figures out or finds out about kryptonite or makes the ring or has it there, or Superman gives it to him or whatever. So the idea of all that makes a lot more sense after you see what happened in Man of Steel when you did have rogue Kryptonians bent on destroying everything. Yeah,
all he's got is Superman's word that he won't do what Zod tried to do. So, it's obviously there's some trust issues there that Superman has to work through in the follow-up to Man of Steel. But on the flip side of things, we haven't really looked at the end of the movie's title, which is Dawn of Justice, which to me is an obvious nod to the fact that this is a prequel to Justice League, not just a sequel to Man of Steel.
Dawn of Justice. That's when I hear that, that's the way I feel like I need to say it. Just like excited with my fist clenched. But yeah, obviously, we've heard that Justice League will now be the next movie for certain, and the Dawn of Justice title makes sense, as Batman and Superman were two of the leaders that started the Justice League. In most incarnations, they're the ones who are around at the very beginning, along with Wonder Woman, and we know she's in this movie. So a lot of it's starting to come together toward a Justice League, and all of it makes much more sense with that title. A lot of people have been saying it's redundant, it's cliche, it's whatever. My take on it is this may or may not be the title that sticks. This could be a filming title. This could be a title that they're using right now. This could be a title to kind of give people an idea of what the movie's going to be about, and that is these two guys coming together for the first time, maybe not seeing eye to eye. But as you see through the title itself goes through sort of a transformation. It starts off kind of adversarial with Batman versus Superman, and it ends with Dawn of Justice, which means that we're almost being told right off the bat that at the beginning they're gonna be distrustful of each other, but by the end they're going to give birth to the Justice League, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, I 100% see that same parallel there. So I think this will be the title they'll stick with. They've done the logo and everything, which was an interesting logo. A lot darker, a lot more gritty. There was a bit of the S missing from the bottom of the right-hand corner. That seemed to be, a chunk of it missing there. It looks very, gritty is the word I would use for the logo of the Batman v Superman movie.
I've heard people mention that a bit of the S is missing from the logo, but if you look closely, both the S and the Bat are both damaged in the same spot. Yeah. And it goes completely through the entire logo. Yep. So both logos are damaged there. And it makes sense if you're going to be in a movie where they're versus each other. Maybe there is some damage. I don't know that we're going to see a Dark Knight Returns type of story here where they physically fight each other, although Zack Snyder did say they will have a physical altercation or two. He also said we're going to be doing another Superman movie. He also said we're not doing the Dark Knight Returns story. So we don't know exactly what we're getting, and we don't know that Zack has been completely forthcoming in telling us the things that he has told us. So we just have to wait and see. But yeah, I understand. And the logo could stay the same, even if the title doesn't. That Batman Superman logo is not original. It's been pilfered from the Batman Superman comics. They've been using that for 25 years. So it's exactly what I would expect it to be in a Batman Superman movie. So I don't know if people who are confused by it or who don't understand why it's the way it is, or why the Bat is bigger than the S, or what, this is the symbol that we have been seeing since the idea of having a Batman Superman comic in the modern age came about. So it's not all that unusual to see it that way. The only thing that they would have to remove is the actual written title underneath to turn it into whatever they would turn it into. But yeah, you're right. This obviously is the announced title, and most likely the title they'll be going with. But I have certainly seen through testings and through, we're 2 years in advance, I have seen movies change their title. I have seen trailers for movies that have a title, and when the movie comes out, it's called something else. So we're a long way away from a trailer, and yet I have seen movies change their title. I've also seen scenes in trailers that don't exist in the movie at all. So many changes can undergo during the making of a movie, especially when you're this far away. But for now, I do like the logo, being that it's a Batman and Superman collaboration movie. So the title, I've heard mostly negative about the title, and that's why I say it's still possible that they might change it, especially based on audience reaction. But I think either way, they know that they probably have a pretty good moneymaker on their hands here, so the title isn't going to matter all that much.
No, so that is the title, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Released in cinemas May 6, 2016. Even that could change at this point in time. But we are, as we said, within the 2 years now. This being the end of May issue of Radio KAL. So May 2014 to May 2016.
I have, of course.
Time left.
already used my stolen Legion flight ring and gone ahead and watched the film, but I'm not going to spoil any of it for you.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. So you
You're
do know
welcome.
the actual title of the movie then?
I do, I do,
But you
I do.
just making out you don't.
Well, of course.
Very good.
Whatever I talk about from now on has to be a fake out because I already know exactly what happens.
All right. We do know also that the movie is filming is underway on the movie. In the announcement that they released for the actual title of the film, they let loose the fact that they are filming in Detroit, Michigan, also in Illinois, Africa, and the South Pacific.
Yeah, Africa was the one that kind of stood out to me as being strange and odd. You don't really think of movies being filmed in Africa. You get a lot of Australia, you get a lot of New Zealand,
Yeah.
but Africa seemed. I'm wondering what exactly it is that they'll be filming there.
Yeah, people are speculating about, something from Themyscira, something, yeah, I don't know. Depends, is it Africa as in Africa, with lions and tigers and things like that, or is it, Africa somewhere in the cities? It'll be interesting to see what comes of it. But we do know they are filming at the moment. We've seen some paparazzi photos of Zack Snyder in the street there in Detroit, Michigan. We've seen Gal Gadot in a blue dress as Diana Prince in her role there in the film. So a few things starting to leak out.
And one thing we can be certain of, unless they really shake things up, is that for the people who are upset about Superman and Wonder Woman being a couple in the comics, doesn't look like we're going to get a chance to get that here. So be happy.
Well, we are still working on the Superman-Lois relationship in this continuity in the film, so I don't see that happening. But it'll be interesting to see if there was a bit of chemistry there and what, how that came about. But so the filming is underway. We're seeing some photos coming out now. We've seen the Kent farm completed with crew taking off the boards and things there, the weather boards and what have you, getting ready to film there in Yorkville, Illinois, which is the Illinois mention that was in that press release. So exciting times, filming underway for Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
It is strange that so much is already being done when we're so far away. And I know we talked about before the delay and why. And obviously, if they had to move for any reason, it made more sense to go the full year and come back out the next. But that this much is going on, you think if there was a delay, then they would just wait. But I guess they have enough to do, and they have enough effects to add, and they have enough filming that it'll take them the better part of a year to do. And then the after stuff.
Yeah. I guess the after stuff is probably the parts that will probably take more time than anything else. Also, maybe weather factors come into play. Depending on what type of, what they're needing in Africa, and you got to think, it's spring there or about to be spring in the US now, so about to be summer in the US. So in the next month or so. So and then in Africa, I guess it's the same kind of thing there where you have to think about what kind of conditions there are, what they need for outdoor on-location shots. So that probably comes into play as well.
Yep, all that stuff is. Obviously they had whatever delay they had to begin with, and now they have extra time. So whenever they run into things like that throughout the filming, they'll have that extra
Buffer
time to kind of buffer themselves.
Yep.
And then of course we also had the other big thing that came out, and that was before the title was announced, and that was Zack Snyder's 2-day release of the picture of the Batmobile.
That's right. On one day he revealed a photo on Twitter of the rear of the Batmobile with a tarpaulin over the top of it, saying he was going to unveil the Batmobile the next day. But not only did we get a revelation of the Batmobile the next day, but sad Batman was standing next to it.
Sad Batman. That's funny. What's interesting about this is, people have put together their own logos where they put the sad Superman picture from Man of Steel, the original kind of really dark poster that was released with him looking down, and the Batman from this Twitter release next, side by side, and they really do look very similar. They're standing in a very similar pose. So I know everybody's making a big deal about him being sad Batman, but it's really very, very similar to what they had already done with Man of Steel in the first film. And here we have a Batman uniform that is very, very much like the Dark Knight Returns costume that we were talking about before, and also I thought it was like the Year One costume as well.
Yeah, we got the photo that Zack Snyder posted was very dark, very shadowy, and a lot of people have then used Photoshop and other programs to lighten the photo, change the exposure so that we got more detail, more lifted the shadows, if you like, to be able to get some more detail on the costume and the Batmobile itself. And people have colorized it and done all different variations of whether it's a grey suit, whether it's a black suit, whether it's a blue suit, all different types of variations of colorizations. And it'll be interesting to finally see a color version of the costume, because the photo was a black and white photo. So to see what the actual colors of the costume are, but all in all, I'm not a big Batman fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I like the costume. I don't mind the bat symbol on the chest, the design of that, which obviously we've seen in the official image, poster image, the title image that we've seen, combining the two logos together. It looks good. It's a very Jim Lee type of costume design, and for what it is, I'm sure Batman fans are happy.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of complaints about it, but I was surprised because I've been saying for years with the Batman movies, because I really like superhero movies and I go to see them, and as we all know, I was disappointed with the Nolan films. But one thing that always bothered me about the Batman costumes on film was that none of them were really like anything he's ever worn in the comics at all. And I know we've changed around the Superman uniform for the new Man of Steel movie, but it's still very, very similar to what he wears, minus the trunks. Pretty much is really all that was changed. There's some piping and some different things but I mean, these are just accessories and things that make that enhance it a little bit, but they didn't change the overall look of the uniform. People talk about the color and things, but in different lights, in different scenes in the film, you can see it's very bright. In others, it's very shiny. In darkened environments, it's darker. But that means that the suit still retains what it generally looks like. And in the Batman films, especially the Nolan ones, they seem very puffy to me. The fact that they were armor, it was kind of fat. Like his face was really round and fat and big. But I've heard people complaining about this picture, saying that it looks like a rubberized fake muscle suit. And I don't know how they can see that much from a grainy black and white Twitter photo. But to me, it looks like a body-tight suit that is enhanced by the actual wearer's muscles. That is actual, and whether or not Ben Affleck really gets that large, the idea being that Batman, Bruce Wayne, is that large because he works out so much and because he needs to be in order to be the Batman that he is as a plain old human being, but at the peak of human conditioning. So I don't have a problem with it, and I like how it looks, and I feel like it's going to be either very dark blue and gray or black and gray, which again makes me happier than any of the bat suits that we've had in the movie so far, because it's much closer to, and maybe exact to, what we've already seen in different incarnations in the comics.
Yeah, and even if there are definitions on the costume, I mean, he's the guy dressing up as a bat. If he wants to strike fear in people's minds and criminals' minds, of course he's going to put more of a muscular definition on the front of his costume. If that's some kind of a design element that he wants to put in there, if it's not just all muscle of him being underneath, but at least there's no bat nipples.
Yes, that's very true. We could have had bat nipples, so consider yourselves lucky.
People. That's right.
Joel Schumacher's still around, so.
So that was the Batman costume and Batmobile reveal by Zack
I love the
Snyder.
Batmobile because to me it looks much more like the Batmobile from the Michael Keaton movie, which I was a big fan of, and it looks more closely resembling of the comics Batmobile than this big giant tumbler that was a military machine that really didn't seem to fit Batman's persona at all.
Yeah. So But we're interested, waiting for any more, reveals of costumes. Wonder Woman's costume is obviously one that fans want to see, but for Superman fans, we're really interested to see what kind of tweaks they've done on the Man of Steel costume. Is there some colour tweaks? Is there some design tweaks? It'll be interesting to see what they come up with for the Superman costume. We wait.
I'm not really sure what they could change. I mean, I really like the way the Man of Steel costume looks. I'm looking at my statue from the Man of Steel right now, and you can see the whole costume on it. I mean, the only difference, the only thing I might add is some more reds, which would be in line with where the briefs were that everybody wanted them to remove. Maybe a belt. But what would a belt do for Superman, other than if you think he needs to carry a cell phone or some money or something? But I don't really know what it would do other than just look more like the comic book uniform, which I am a fan of. But why? And at this point,
from my point of view, if they were going to tweak it, I like the costume design itself. The colours wouldn't mind seeing maybe a little bit of a brighter blue. And the yellow needs to stand out a bit more in the symbol, because in most photos it came out as being a dull grey or not even showing yellow. So I'd like to see a bit of a lift in the colours, a bit of a brighter version. Nothing too drastic, just a bit of a subtle change so that it showed up better in certain lighting situations, and maybe the cape a little bit shorter so it's not dragging on the ground all the time.
Yeah, I could see that, the cape being shorter. I do want to go back to what I mentioned before. If you remember the scene in Smallville where he's confronting the giant Kryptonian and Feora, the suit is very bright. You can see all three colors very, very clearly. It's very bright. So depending on the lighting, that might not be that much of a problem. Maybe they just need to be more brighter when they're filming.
More conscious of their lighting situations for.
Or maybe that was purposely done theme wise. That was the bright hope in Smallville as it was being trashed. The idea of this, and they had the American flag on the building in the background. All that stuff kind of popped out in that particular scene. Whereas most of the movie was very kind of dark and a bit of a downer, which I think is the biggest negative that most of the negative reviewers failed to really tap into when they were just trashing it for not being a Donner movie and not having the lightness of self that those movies had. I think it more needed to be said that in most of the reviews I read, they didn't mention it. Just really is depressing, and really they take it very seriously, and that is one thing that the DC movies seem to do. Whereas Marvel, you got Spider-Man jumping around making jokes, which I love, which is fun. But in the Nolan Batman films and in this new Man of Steel film, it's very somber and it's very serious, which it would be if you were in the situation that Clark was in Man of Steel. It's not really a jokey type situation, and it's not light at all. So as far as showing him smiling or showing him being happy that he's Superman, we had that little montage before all the trouble broke. But once the trouble happens, do you really, even in real life, do you really want your police officers and your army men joking? No, and like laughing and we can't wait till we have some beer. No. It's a serious thing, so it should be serious. But I do understand that Marvel movies are oftentimes considered more fun because of that. But you also, when I watch them, I don't really ever get the sense that things are really terrible or horrific.
Yep. Yeah, they always seem to have a bit of a jokey attitude towards what's going on. But so that's where things are at with the movie. We don't have too much beyond that at this point in time, but that's pretty good for, like you said, 2 years out to get all that kind of detail at this point in time. So we keep an eye out on the Superman homepage for all little details and things that come out, rumors and speculation and news and announcements over the next 2 years.
Yeah, we will. It's going to be exciting.
All right, let's move into some TV news. Now, you and I were big fans of the Young Justice animated series, which sadly died after the end of the Young Justice Invasion season. And it was, like, at the very beginning of 2013, still on TV, and the Daytime Emmy Awards reached back to that point in time, and Young Justice has been nominated for a Daytime Emmy, believe it or not.
It's very strange that so much time has gone by, and I felt like this was done, and here we are seeing proof positive that this was a great show and managed horribly, and somehow through some business decision, it was yanked off the air very prematurely. It was getting better and better, and it was great, and here we have it nominated for an Emmy Award. I don't expect it to win because it is largely forgotten and largely unnoticed, unfortunately. But I think that the Cartoon Network, and I think it's been proven time and time again with Justice League Unlimited, with the Superman animated show, that Cartoon Network is not the right venue for this. And maybe I'm wrong on animated. That might have been, I think that was on the WB. I don't know if it ever switched over. But the point is that a lot of these shows, as good as they might be and as better as they get with time, seems like they kind of just get lost in the fray of whatever it is Cartoon Network thinks is important at the moment.
Yeah, now it is sad that Cartoon Network seems to jumble up the timing and the scheduling, and that kind of hinders the popularity of these shows that really do need a constant and just regular audience, to be able to maintain their momentum. But the Daytime Emmy Awards recognise programs that aired from 2 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the 2013 calendar year, which Young Justice did, and re-recording mixer Carlos Sanchez has been nominated for his work on Young Justice, and will go up against fellow nominees in the re-recording mixer category for sound and that. So congratulations to him for his nomination, and the actual Daytime Emmy Awards will take place at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills on Sunday, June 22nd. So we will let you know whether Young Justice wins for Outstanding Achievement in Sound Mixing for Animation when the Daytime Emmy Awards are aired.
And by the way, I fully expect there to be a continuation of Young Justice on DVD with their movie animation studio still churning out things at the rate that they are. I would expect to see a Young Justice movie sometime soon.
Well, we can only keep our fingers crossed that Warner Brothers Animation do something with the Young Justice people and the kids and the crew and the characters, because it was a fantastic series, great storylines, great characters, great animation. So hopefully there is something in the pipeline for Young Justice fans down the track. All right, let's get into our comic book chat. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Superman Doomed has been the saga that's kind of taking shape over all over the main Superman titles, main family of comic book titles in the Superman world. We started off with Superman Doomed #1, the one-off special. What did you make of this comic book?
I really enjoyed it thoroughly, and I feel somewhat relieved because in a way I kind of felt like what has been going on in the Superman comics hasn't been all that great lately. And when we heard about this Doomed thing, it kind of smacked of gimmick. It kind of smacked of, you're just trying to sell books, that kind of thing. But I really felt like they got the character in a way that oftentimes he seems to not be gotten since the dawn of the New 52. I also really love the artwork, and I found it to be very striking to look at. There are some moments that stand out. The whole "I promise" thing, that he's going through this fight, and he promised that he would protect them all, and he promised that everybody would be okay, and the fact that it's very important to him to hold his promise. And then I was really shocked to see him kind of tear Doomsday in half. That was very, very shocking, especially since this is a more powerful version of Doomsday, and in the original story, they both kind of fought to a standstill until they eventually died. It didn't seem like Superman would be capable of that, but very interesting. I also love the scene with Perry on the roof when he went and was asked, "Didn't you quit? And what are you doing here?" And that he asked Perry for advice. I found that to be very very nice to see. And I have here written Lex is right. I don't remember what that is specifically in reference to, but Lex must say something in the story or do something in the story that makes me say he's right. Whether people are arguing with him in the story or trying to say that it's Lex Luthor, we shouldn't trust him or whatever. But
I'm just flicking through the comic now, and Lex Luthor tells Superman that he has to leave Earth, that Doomsday is the one, like that Doomsday is obviously attracted to him, and the reason that he's here is because of Superman. And so that Superman, I think Lex Luthor says, like when he comes to the Justice League emergency bunker, he says that Superman has to, you should just leave, and Superman actually says no, Lex is right. So Superman says Luthor's right, and says that I'm leaving, but he's going to take Doomsday with him, and that's when he takes the fight to Venus, and that's where he absolutely rips apart, or he destroys Doomsday, but or beats Doomsday, thinking that he's all done. But Superman comes back to Smallville to check in on what's going there, with everyone having been out in a coma, and Doomsday actually follows him there. And that's where the final showdown between Superman and Doomsday happens. And it's really, it's strange because you think the saga is called Superman Doomed, and this is the first issue of this big, ongoing story, and yet Superman defeats Doomsday at the end of the very first issue. But the story isn't about Doomsday, it's about the Doomsday virus that Superman is infected with, having torn Doomsday apart, and, obviously he's inhaled this virus, and it's now part of in his bloodstream and everything, and that's the real challenge for Superman, as well as coming to terms with the fact that he has killed. And part of this story was also about him, talking to Dr. Veritas about, what do I do? I have to make this decision, and do I kill him? Do I not kill him? And she says you can't think about that now. You just have to do what needs to be done and worry about who you'll be and what that means for you afterwards.
And that's kind of what Perry said when he went to ask him as Clark. He couldn't be as open with him as with Veritas, but from the vague impression he gave Perry gave him the answer that he was looking for, and it was basically the same that Veritas gave, and that is that he has to live by his principles, but sometimes that you have to skew those principles in order to succeed.
The greater good.
Which is what he does here, and the idea that Lex was right in that instance also goes back to the Batman v Superman situation, or any of these Forever Evil situations, any of this type of stuff where, we ask ourselves, would these creatures and terrible invasion forces come to our little cities and our little planet if Superman, if the Justice League, if these characters weren't here? And in a lot of cases, the truth is Lex is right in those situations too, and that is, you're the whole reason they're here. If you weren't here, they weren't here. I just got finished reading, and we're going to talk about it coming up in Forever Evil. One of his big points was we didn't have all these invasions. We didn't have all these alien forces coming. We didn't have interdimensional rifts and beings from other dimensions coming to kill us until you guys showed up. And so the idea that you're the problem and you need to leave is correct.
Valid,
I mean, so I think that's what I was kind of getting at there with that as well.
Yeah, so that led into Action Comics number 31, which is a direct follow-on from Superman Doomed. And in this, I like the fact that in these Superman Doomed issues, we're getting a first page, which is a page from the Daily Planet, and we see an article written by Lois Lane recapping events or catching people up on events or reporting on events. I like that aspect of each of these comics leading into the actual story.
Yeah, I thought it was cool as well. I also have written down the QPad 5 from Queen Industries. We have the iPad in real life, and apparently the Microsoft type company over there, or the Apple type company over there, is Queen Industries. So we have the QPad 5. I thought that was cute. And
Big Belly Burger down the bottom too, and advertisement for that. Now, in this issue, we have Superman, dealing with the fact that he's sick. He's dealing, not just dealing with the virus within him, but what it's doing to him psychologically as well. He seems to be angry. He seems to want to hurt people. He seems to be imagining himself, doing all these horrible things. And so he heads to the fortress to try to seclude himself, but that doesn't even work in itself, because he goes out and destroys this plane. Thankfully, nobody's killed in doing that, but he's obviously not himself, and he's having a hard time with this doomsday virus that's overtaking him. And also we see Steel dealing with his own infection and how he manages to upgrade himself to deal with that.
Yeah, I like that liquid steel that he was in there, and I like the way he rebuffs Senator Lane when he comes, and it's clear that he really cherishes his friendship with Superman, and isn't gonna sell him out for anybody or anything. So that was a really, really nice scene to see, and it was neat the way they kind of upgraded the idea of Steel, that he can heal himself in this steel type pool, and it's liquid stuff that'll help him get better more quickly. At first, when I started reading it, I thought that the art was very cartoony when compared with the Doomed thing, which of course is a special, and probably they took much more time on, and they made sure that it was just right, whereas Action Comics comes out every month, so they're sometimes under time constraints. But as it went on a bit, I actually realized I kind of liked it. In spite of it looking a little cartoony, there was something I liked about it in a different way than the way I liked Doomed. So it ended up not being as bad as I thought it would be. I also thought, and I'm sure not by accident, that the entrance to the fortress looked like the doorway to the scout ship from Man of Steel.
True. Yeah, I just noticed that now. True. Yeah, the coloring in this comic book is really good. The mood that's set in all the different scenes is quite good. And we also have the scenes in Smallville with Lois getting Lana closer to the actual
those
what's
are
going
great.
on, and Lana shows her trust and just her belief in Superman by taking off the bio suit and believing that Superman will make things right, and she's hoping that he'll make things right, but she shows just how much she has, how belief she has in Superman's goodness and the fact that he will fix things.
Of course, she's not aware, like I'm sure Lois would be, since she has those psycho mind-reading powers, that Superman was willing to risk Lois's life on that whole parasite thing. Lana's still naive of that, but I like that too, and it was very touching, and it was telling of the different relationship that Lana has to Superman, to Clark, that Lois doesn't have, and has only with Superman. And I don't know if Lois knows or not, but she definitely seems much more suspicious and much more unwilling, which is starkly different to the way she is in Forever Evil, where she seems to be very trusting and very connected to Superman, whereas I don't feel like we've really seen in the 3 years that the New 52 has started. There seemed to be a connection between her and Clark at the beginning, and now that's pretty much gone, and really I haven't seen much at all by way of connection between her and Superman, which is very different between the way Lana is, and I like that Lana is still kind of an ongoing part of the narrative, back before the New 52 and the 10 years before that, as far as I can remember. Lana was around once in a while. When she was a special guest star, she'd show up, she'd come in from Smallville, she was running LexCorp for a while, she was the president's wife for a while, but she was never used on a regular basis. So I like that in Action Comics she seems to be present an awful lot. I also wanted to mention that when he first attacked that plane, I was a little confused, because I thought, why is he so angry? Because obviously he's being angered by this virus, but it's something that causes him to get angry. And I thought, is it that they shot Crypto? But then I'm like, well, Crypto's invulnerable, so that wouldn't matter, but there's blood here, so they're clearly hunting wolves out in the wild, so maybe that's illegal, or maybe they're not allowed, or maybe they're poachers of some kind, but as the story went on, no one said that they were illegal poachers. They said that they were hunters, and hunters are allowed to hunt, so I'm not really sure what he was so angry about, other than he's just angry. But why that specific event made him so angry, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just got the impression that violence of any kind of triggered that So that was the impression I got. It wasn't necessarily that they were illegally hunting or anything like that. Just that the whole acts of violence were kind of like starts boiling his blood kind of thing. Just the because of what Doomsday is, that something along those lines would trigger the virus and make it hard for him to kind of suppress.
Fair enough.
Okay, and that takes us into Superman Wonder Woman number 8, which is the second chapter of Superman Doomed, the infected storyline. And again, we start with the Lois Lane story article telling us where things are at. And here we have Diana finally finding Clark in his apartment. This issue kind of bugged me a little bit because in searching for Superman, it kind of shows how, and I agreed with a little bit with the review on our website, it kind of showed how disconnected Superman and Wonder Woman are in their relationship, and that it took her to, she investigated all these different things about Superman, but forgot totally about Clark Kent's persona and the fact that he has an apartment in Metropolis to go look for him there. It kind of took Batman to trigger that to her, and it just makes it obvious that Wonder Woman really doesn't understand Superman or Clark in the way people should in a relationship.
If that's what they were going for. I mean, my first thought was it makes no sense, right? I mean, she's going to every single person in Clark's life, so it's not that she totally forgets that he's Clark, because she's going around asking people who know Clark if they have seen him. So she knows he's Clark, so just by way of logical deduction, you'd go, well, he's Clark and he lives here. And the only thing you can say is maybe she didn't know that he lives somewhere. She knows he's Clark, and she knows he interacts during the day as a reporter, and she knows that he knows Lois and Kat. But maybe she doesn't know. Maybe they never talked about that he goes to an apartment. There was a story that I read in the Justice League run that I just read, that he takes her to Smallville and they eat at a diner, and she asks to meet his parents. So it may be possible that she's not aware that he had, because that's really the only thing that makes sense, would be she didn't know that he had an apartment. She didn't know where his apartment was. But then when Batman says it, she says, you know what, you're right.
I'm a fool. I'm so single-minded.
Yeah, I'm so stupid. So it really is just a contrivance made by the writer to elongate the search process and make it seem desperate, and also to bring Batman in. But the funny thing about it is, and this happened to me again on one of the other months, we had almost the same conversation about something else, and it took the reviewer, who you should probably mention.
T.A. Hewitt.
There you go. To point out to me that, he said almost the same, I don't even know if it was the same reviewer, but he said almost the same exact thing, and that is, it makes sense as long as you're not paying any attention. As long as you're just reading, in other words, stupidly, and just taking what they give you and just reading. And I can say that because I kind of was. I was in the story. I was enjoying it. I just followed it for what it was. And as I was reading it, it never occurred to me that it was extremely silly that she wouldn't look for his apartment unless she didn't know where it was. It just none of this ever occurred to me until I then read the review and it was pointed out to me. And that is true. And I think it was almost like, well, we can't have her go there because then the story would be over on page 1. So we got to kind of have all these, she'd never get to Lois. They'd never be this, confrontation with the soldiers. None of this other stuff would ever happen because she wouldn't need to go to Lois. She wouldn't need to go to Kat. Maybe those would be her first stops anyway. And then she would get there. But you'd think that would be the first place she would go, and then backtrack from there if he's not there. But, T.A. Hewitt was right. And, I don't know. I mean, I think they do this in stories because they want to have a certain thing happen. Like he mentions in the review that it was just a way to shoehorn Batman into the story. And maybe that's true. But with the way these comics are connected, and that's one thing I wanted to point out, that what I like about this particular section, and it happened, I guess, in the Return to Krypton story and all that, but I like that they each have a part, and it's part 1, and it's part 2, and it's part 3, and you know the order to read them in, and they continue, they flow by from one to the other. And it seemed when I was reading it that it was very natural that Doomed would go into action, and then that action with Wonder, and would then lead into the Superman Wonder Woman, and the story makes sense from that point of view. They're in a relationship. She would be looking for him. She was worried about him from Action Comics. She was worried about him, and but yes, it is very odd that she wouldn't check for him. I also thought it was weird that she shows up where Lois is like a minute after she calls her. And she's got a car, but she couldn't have been right around the corner from where Lois was in reality. So what did she pick up the car and fly there and then put it down and then was there?
It is a bit strange coming into the sports car.
Right. I thought, well, when I first saw it, okay, she landed behind a tree and no one's going to ask her. That's going to be weird. But then I saw the car there and I said, well, did she like fly the car to like a block away and then drive to where they were at? And that seems odd too, because she has no disguise. She's just wearing a trench coat with her Wonder Woman boots. So she doesn't seem like she would go to the trouble of hiding the fact that she needed to carry her car there. So I'm not sure what happened there. I also thought it was weird that he had this tiny little S on his naked chest. I'm not sure what that was supposed to. Is that supposed to be the uniform because it's nanites and it grows on him when he needs it, and he's so large now because he's been infected that's the size of it? But when he was normal size, that was a normal sized logo on there. But I love the page. I love page 25 where he's on the ground and she's holding him. I thought the artwork was really awesome there. And again, in this story, I needed to point out that I like Batman in this story. And in this, as we're going forward, he says things like, we need to save him, not I have to put him down, or it seems much more like genuine concern for Clark as opposed to we're the only ones who can make sure he doesn't hurt other people, which is also true, but he's saying it in a different way, and it makes him seem much more likable to me.
And they're still playing up this whole thing about her not telling him I love you, and he even, he says, you couldn't even tell it to me, you couldn't even say it to me, and she says, you know how I feel about you, but she still won't say it to him.
She's not saying it. I think, and at the time of reading it, I kind of had the same thought of what you were saying and what Hewitt was saying, and that is that there's clearly a large rift here that neither of them are addressing, and they're clearly not as close and never will be as close as they should be to be in a relationship. But having just read all the Justice League, I never read them. I just this weekend in preparation for this, but also because I always wanted to and just never got around to it, I had read Justice League 1 back when it came out and read nothing else. So I read from 2 all the way up through all of the specials and all of the events and up till exactly where we are now in the present. And in reading those, I saw reasons why. It makes sense based on the connection she has had going sour and the thing with Steve and, not being sure if she could trust people and coming from an island where there are no men, and she's taught from a very early age that men are the bad guy. It makes sense that it would take her a much longer period of time before she was ready to say that sort of thing. And also, she doesn't want to say that because then it means something different than what it might mean if she decides, like she did with Steve, that it needs to not happen anymore. And somebody like Batman, who has pointed out to them that it can be very dangerous that you guys are together, could convince her at some point that they need to not be together. And since Clark has many more human emotions and is much more tied into that emotional center, it might be much harder for him to realize that, whereas she doesn't want to have to come back from the point of having said it before she's certain that that's the way they want it to go.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. That's where that's where I was going with it.
Yeah, no, I understand totally. Now, that takes us into the next chapter of the Superman Doomed saga, which continues in Batman Superman number 11. And again, we have the Lois Lane article recapping events in this one. What did you make of this issue?
Batman Superman 11. Well, I'm enjoying it just because I like the way they each run into each other, and I'm enjoying this storyline. I'm wondering how on that first opening page we mentioned that it's cool that the Daily Planet's getting that page with her writing the articles and photos and stuff.
How they got
The
the
one
photo?
before, the one before, I think it said a photo provided by Jim Lee or something, whoever drew, whoever the artist was,
Right.
and that was kind of cute. This one said, oh, it was artist rendering of Doomsday,
Oh, okay.
and the artist rendering was whoever the artist was on Doomed or Action Comics or whatever it was. This one says photo provided by Jimmy
Photo by
Olsen,
James Olsen, yeah.
and it makes no sense
Because
it's a photo of him half naked in his apartment where he was alone with Diana. And how would Jimmy Olsen have gotten that photo? He wasn't there. He was nowhere near there. No one knew anything was going on there.
I want to click on these buttons down the bottom that say watch exclusive footage of the destruction in the Bahamas. Like they got that little play button on the.
I know. I think it would be really cool.
On my iPad, I'm reading my comics, and it's like, yes, I want to click on it and see it.
Yeah. Since it is, a lot of comics now are being read digitally, it would be kind of neat if they had some sort of link that went back to those little things. But that does bring an interesting point. I do like how it's clearly a web page, and there may be a paper edition of the Daily Planet, but what we're looking at is the web page, and the whole thing started with the New 52, with them kind of trashing the old building and starting anew with this whole internet thing, and that we're in the future, and it's I think it's very cool as we go forward.
Yeah. Now this comic book has Batman heading to the Fortress of Solitude. Superman's giving him the key to it. Wonder Woman and Steel both arrive to give him a hand, and Batman and Wonder Woman and Krypto head into the Phantom Zone to trace back Doomsday's origin, like where he came from, find out what's going on, and try to get him back in there, and or try to find a solution to this whole problem. And while in there, they come across Mongol and what's his name, Non? Is it Non? Yes, of Krypton. And have a Ghost Soldier, and there's a lot of fighting going on, and a lot of you don't know who's who, and Zardu or Xanadu as I like to call him. The Phantom King is also in there, and it's what I liked about this comic was Batman's internal dialogue about and all the characters wanting to do what Superman would do, or thinking what would Superman do.
Yeah, I like that. Again, that's another thing that I like about Batman in this. He's very complimentary towards Superman, even though he's not saying it directly to him in his little thought dialogue to himself. It's all thinking about, I decided to do what you would do. And
even Steel says the same thing at the end there. They told him, we told you to shut it down if anything happened, and he said, oh, I got, you've got 30, I gave you extra time because I knew that's what Superman would do.
Yeah, and that's the same kind of thing that reminded me that this storyline seems to get Superman much more than other. And the thing is that he inspires others. He brings hope, and even when he's not around, or even when he's not part of the main action, as he wasn't in a lot of this story, he is still influencing actions that go on around him. On the front page too, they mention Luthor as one of several prominent scientists that were brought forward to study this, and I know he's scientific and he's very smart, but I never knew that the rest of the world thought of him as a prominent scientist. It also seems, and this goes back to what I was saying before, that Lois doesn't seem to be Superman's friend or like him very much when she has headlines like Super Menace. That's her headline. Normally, Lois being as close to Superman as she usually is, she would be a little more protective in these headlines. But I wonder again if there's something in her mind that knows that Superman did what he did because she has those powers still happening.
Yeah,
I'm not sure also if I like that all that much. Obviously we're trying to make Lois Lane just as important as everybody else, and she's always been a big part of the story, but she's always been a big part of the story by being in the story, and by going after the story, and by being tenacious, and by being a human woman who won't stop until she gets the truth. And now they've given her powers, and she's getting the truth by yanking it out of people's minds and by having powers, which is something Lois never was before. And it seems like they're still going to drag that out. So,
because she seems to be affiliated a little bit with Brainiac. I'm guessing, like she seems to be reporting back to Brainiac in some scenes that I've seen. That's what it kind of indicates, that she's, not fully in control of these abilities, or fully knowledgeable about these abilities, and maybe is being manipulated.
Yeah, it's definitely very possible. In which case, I guess
That
it
might
will
be
go away.
tainting her writing too.
It seemed like she was cured of it during that storyline, but then we saw very soon thereafter that she still had the powers. So who knows how long that's going to go. On the front page, they say that front page picture of the Daily Planet. They say Doomsday origin is found in the Northwest Indies, but then in the book, Batman says he was tracing Doomsday's origin, and it led him to the Arctic. So I'm not sure if
Batman's
that was
technology is better than.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that was confusing or if they meant that his first appearance in the world was in the Northwest Indies, but Batman traced him there because he escaped from the Phantom Zone, I guess is what they meant. I also like, generally, the Batman I'm used to, and the Batman that turned me off to Batman is the one that doesn't believe he has any frailties or any weaknesses. I like in this story and from what I'm seeing in the New 52 in general that he knows has weaknesses. I forget exactly what he says in this story, but it's something to the effect that they could break me in half as soon as they could. So it's very surprising that you're in danger by this or whatever, as strong as you are. So it's nice to see that Batman is admitting to himself, because it's all in internal dialogue generally, but that he knows he does have weaknesses.
Yeah, no.
And I wonder how Batman knows who Ghost Soldier is when the panel right before, when they say Ghost Soldier, he says who? Like, he doesn't know who he is, but then, and Diana has to tell him who he is, but he later he says, I have a picture of you in my mind being stabbed. How does he know that he was stabbed through the back with a phantom sword if he didn't even know who Ghost Soldier was a minute before?
Interesting. I didn't
Seemed like
catch that.
Seems like a writing thing. But and why does Wonder Woman have a bandage on her leg? She comes out of the portal and she has a bandage around her knee, like near her knee, and I don't know what that is. I don't remember her getting hurt in the knee.
Through. Where's the bandage?
Right when they come out and they start yelling at him, I think it's the page right before that. I think it's a splash page where she tackles Non. I think it's Non.
Oh, okay. I don't think that's a bandage. I think that's like a leg band, but it's not there in every page.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what threw me then, because it wasn't there before and I didn't see it. I love the art inside, but I wasn't
not there before. No, it's not. It's on her left leg, but it's it could be a colouring problem or an issue. It looks like the background. I don't know. Very strange, but it's not there in the final picture either. So, but this chapter will continue in Superman number 31, which will be released on May 28th, which is the date that this podcast goes to air, Wednesday, May 28th. So we will talk about that chapter in our next podcast next month.
I'm really enjoying the story. These little things I'm pointing out seem to be writing errors or art flaws, but the story itself I'm enjoying.
Yeah, we're nitpicking there when we're looking at little things, but sometimes they pull you out of the story when you're seeing those things and you don't understand where they fit in. But it is a great story so far, and I'm enjoying it. And it's something different with Doomsday, something we haven't seen before, so definitely well appreciated. Okay, well, you've touched on Forever Evil a little bit. Did you want to talk about the finale number 7, finally released, Forever Evil number 7, and that kind of also includes Justice League number 30. Both of those tie in together, so we can probably talk about those jointly.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I decided this weekend that I was going to spend most of my time reading all the Justice League books and reading through all of the crossovers, and now I've gotten to Forever Evil, and I read all of those, and, as story as a whole, I really enjoyed the Forever Evil story, and I really loved what I love about it most is that Lex Luthor is the center. He's the guy in all of the he's telling the story. He's the guy that it's from the perspective of, and as much as Michael Bailey seems to not appreciate it, I liked that he was the quote unquote hero of the story, and he really was. It's in some ways confuses me because I'm not really sure what his end game is, but the Justice League seems to know he still has one, and there seems to be something that they're still suspicious of. And the weird thing is that I've been reading now for 3 years and I read all the Justice League stuff, and Lex Luthor did not have one altercation with the Justice League in the entire time that I read. Now, of course, there's a 5-year gap where we didn't see what exactly happened, but in any of the flashbacks, they don't show any altercations with Lex. And from what I remember, the only run-in that Superman really had with Lex was in the very early stages where he captured him and tried to experiment on him or whatever. Then he went to jail, and he's been in jail all this time, but they seem almost villainous in their hatred of the guy who, at least in the New 52, we haven't really seen them given specific proof that he's a bad guy. And what he has done here, along with some of the other quote-unquote villains, is nothing less than save everybody's asses. So I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I can understand them not wanting him to join the Justice League, but on the other hand, why not? Based on what I've seen of Lex Luthor and based on what they've shown us, other than, well, you guys all know that Lex Luthor's a bad guy, so we don't need to tell you. I mean, I just saw him as a great hero in this. And he did some shady things, like, say good luck to Batman, but then I guess stole the kryptonite ring somehow. But I love those moments, and I go, this is why I love Lex Luthor. This is what I love about him. He is clearly focused on saving the world, and he is the quote-unquote hero in this story, but he still has a secondary goal, and that was there, and that position was to steal the ring. And obviously something else is going on. You know, he shows up at Alfred's door saying he wants to see Batman. Could you tell him I'm here?
I like that.
It was very neat, and I really enjoyed it. I like the way the story went, and I like that Lex Luthor was the center of it. I have found myself enjoying every few years when they do this, where they do a secret society thing, or they do a Legion of Doom thing. I like how Lex Luthor is the center of attention, and Michael Bailey even mentioned it. This is clearly not the Lex Luthor who was running away screaming at the beginning when action first started, and I'm not sure where that guy went or why that guy was there in the first place, but it seemed like they decided to go back to a more confident Lex, a more dangerous Lex, a more capable Lex, and a kind of a braver Lex. Although I did find it funny in Forever Evil 1 when the helicopter's crashing, and it's because they have no power, he yells at the pilot that he's an idiot and he needs to pull up. If there's no power in the helicopter, it doesn't matter what you do. You could pull up, down, you could go sideways. It's crashing. There's nothing he can do. So that was a little silly. But
the ending of that was pretty impressive. Him turning up at Alfred's door, asking, telling Batman, wanting to see Batman. I like that.
Yeah, I liked it very much. I did find, and this is a comic book trope, I guess, that they do every once in a while. You know, the last page of a lot of comic books is, and that's why the Atomic Skull will win. I found it weird every single time they said it. In Justice League 24, for instance, Ultraman tells a story that talks about it's not about good and evil. It's about what's best for the situation at hand or whatever, which makes sense. You know, the best villains are the ones that don't really think of themselves as being evil, but then that flies in the face of this whole story, because from the very beginning they're the crime syndicate and they're forever evil. The characters even say those things, and it's silly to me, because, you know, Ultraman says himself that it's not really about good and evil. It's about, this is what we believe is best to protect our world, or protect this world, or rule this. You know, obviously they're bad guys, but when bad guys come out and say, I'm the bad guy, that's why it doesn't seem to cheesy really work. Yeah. And I did have written down, why didn't the first round of Shazam turn Alexander Luthor back? But now I realize that it's because it wasn't said backwards.
Exactly.
And Lex Luthor says it backwards to him on the ground. And again, another sequence that I loved. Lex Luthor just getting the better of all these, it was great.
Superpowers. Now in Justice League number 30, we see, Lex Luthor, leading the Justice League in those opening pages, and this 4 days earlier page where they're showing the Daily Planet headline, Lex Luthor saves world, and this intern or whoever he is asking, so what's so bad about Lex Luthor, and everybody throwing their newspapers at him. I found that interesting, because he kind of echoes what you just said. We haven't really seen to date why Lex Luthor is considered such a bad guy, by the general public of the continuity, because from their point of view, we know Superman knows he's evil or thinks he's evil or has a problem with him, but the general public, why would they consider him evil?
Well, he did go to jail. I can't remember, because he was working with the government, and they captured Superman, and all of that was on the books, and they all knew they were doing that. But then suddenly he was in jail, and he was in this thing that nobody could get in, and it was impenetrable, and he designed it. But I don't know why he was there. So I don't know if that happened during the 5 years we didn't get to see, if that's something that we're going to find out about
maybe
later.
If somebody listening can give us some feedback as to why Lex Luthor is considered such a dangerous criminal in the DC universe that we're reading at the moment. Scotty and I seem to have a bit of a blank there as to why Lex is considered such a bad guy.
I just feel like nothing's been shown. I feel like it's almost like, well, we know he fought Doomsday and died before that happened, but it doesn't really make any sense that there could have been a time for it, because when it happened, he was married to Lois, and things were sad, or he was engaged to Lois, and the Justice League was different, and Steel was there, and it all came out of him, dying. So when did that happen? They're just saying, it happened, don't worry about it. Same kind of thing. Oh, Lex Luthor's a bad guy, don't worry about it. But then we see this story where, he does some things that are offhanded, but at the same time, he is the only one that's able to come together, come out of the rubble and defeat this. I actually did think, like Michael Bailey, that in the final issue, Superman was going to be the one to take out, as we found out at the end, Alexander Luthor. But in the beginning, I thought he was going to be the one to take out Ultraman. I thought that they were going to revive them before the very end, but it turns out that they really had no impact on the ending of this story, and it was all Lex and the other villains, which is all I really have as far as a big Lex story to tell me the type of person that he is. And that is a guy who would be willing to kill this Cord guy and kill his whole family and destroy everything unless he sells it to him. But then also, by the end of the story, decides he's not going to do that. So it seems almost like he's a ruthless businessman who'll do whatever it takes to forward his goals, but at the same time, he can also correct himself and realize that that's not the right way to go. So it almost seems like he's just a human that makes mistakes. And he also says, I told that story to Bizarro to get him to come out of the dark, but it wasn't true. I was unable to save my sister, not because I didn't try, but because I did try and made things worse. Again, which shows that he's a human and makes mistakes, but that he gets back up and learns from it. So it almost seems like he's admirable and very likable, and maybe that goes back to something Michael Bailey said in his review, and that is that Jeff Johns often makes the villains the good guys and often makes you empathize with them so much that you don't even know if they're villains. And that's kind of where I am. I know that Lex Luthor's a villain only because I know that he is, not because they've shown me that he is. And maybe they're going to get there. But
maybe. Now they will get another cliffhanger ending with Jessica Crumb being chosen for a Green Lantern ring. Interesting cliffhanger there.
Yeah, I mean, is this a character people are familiar with? Is this somebody new? Do you know who she is?
I've not heard of her before, no, but it's just I'm not sure. I'm just reading that.
And it's of course the backwards ring from the other universe, the one that looks for someone weak and looks for someone paranoid.
Again, yes, from what was his name? The Green Lantern of the
Harold Jordan
of Ultraman's universe. Power Ring.
Power Ring.
So that's sent to her, and she's cowering there in the cupboard or the closet there of in Portland, Oregon. So
at least she has a lot of beans.
She does. She has super beans.
Super beans. If she gets hungry, she'll have super flatulence after.
Maybe the ring can help her with that. But and again we have Lex Luthor there also knocking on Alfred's door at the Wayne Manor asking.
That's great. I'm almost disappointed that JL30 came out, because now we have another 2BK. I thought maybe JL30 was going to kind of wrap up and show how he became part of the Justice League in that one issue, but we still got it going on here. So I'm disappointed because it took forever, and now I got to wait for 31, which who knows how long that's going to take.
Well, yes. I mean, Justice League 29 and 30 both came out in... Oh, no, actually, we waited for ages for for Justice League 30 because it had to obviously tie in with Forever Evil. So it was waiting for Forever Evil number 7 to come out, which was delayed. So, hopefully Justice League 31 can come out on time next month and, catch up, because we're seeing all the other 31s out this month. Supergirl 31, Superboy 31, Action Comics 31, all those 31 issues are out in May, but Justice League 30 came out in May because it had to wait for Forever Evil's number 7 to come out. So hopefully they can catch back up and we can get 2 Justice League issues in June.
Now, this reminds me of another thing we talked about last month, and that is that one of the reviewers mentioned that, again, if you don't think about it, it makes sense. But once you stop for a minute and think about what you just read, in one of the Superman Wonder Woman books, they were flying over London and kind of joking and having a romantic moment, but not helping to clean up. And I was asking you, what are they cleaning up? What got destroyed? And I think the answer was, I guess, in the Forever Evil books. But based on what I read, I didn't see in particular that London had gotten destroyed or that it needed to be fixed. And looking at that Batman Wonder Woman book, or Superman Wonder Woman book, I didn't see that anybody needed help. So I wasn't sure what he was referring to.
And it happened in a Wonder Woman comic.
I'm also not certain that those stories are in continuity with this Forever Evil. They are, but they're not happening at the same time. This could have happened before or could have happened after. Because there are ads in some of these books that are showing the Zod Feora fight with Wonder Woman and Superman, but they're going on at the same time as this Forever Evil is going on, but not, I don't believe, in story time. That they can't be, because Superman and Wonder Woman are trapped in Firestorm. So it only makes sense that these stories take place in a different time period. And I don't know whether it's before or after, but I don't believe they were being, well, we don't care what just happened with Forever Evil. Especially since Forever Evil hadn't even ended yet. They were trapped.
I know. It's one of those things you just have to kind of put it aside and just enjoy the story. Supergirl. We just kind of spoke about Supergirl number 31 being out this month. I didn't read the Red Lanterns tie-in because I was a bit lost because of not having read Red Lanterns. What number is it? Number 30, which came before it and led into Supergirl number 31. But both reviews are up on the website now for anybody. James Lance has read both of them and reviewed them for us. So if you did read Supergirl number 31 and were a little bit confused about what had happened, it was a follow-on directly from Red Lanterns number 30, which sees the Red Lanterns chasing after this new Red Lantern who is a judge. They're calling her Judge. And so that's where Supergirl number 31 picks up. What did you make of this issue, Scotty?
Well, the way I looked at it was just another adventure for this team of Red Lanterns. I didn't read 30 either. I tried to read, I believe it was 28, that was the flip book, or maybe it was 29, and I hated it. Like, I just didn't like the writing. I couldn't get into it at all. And as you said last month, I just don't really care about the Red Lanterns. I'm not really interested. But I do like that Guy Gardner looks the way he looks now. I'm reminded, even as early as the beginning of the Justice League title, that Guy Gardner still had that weird bowl cut with the weird high collars, and that's even in the New 52. So they changed him around. It probably happened in his story, in his book, but I like that he looks the way he looks now. What I like about this Red Lantern story in terms of Supergirl, and it happened in Supergirl 31, is that I'm getting a sense that she's a hero now. I'm seeing her trying to talk down people. I'm seeing her saying, well, we can't let these people die. We got to stop this from happening. And in her own book, up to 31 now, I could count the times I've seen her be heroic on like one hand. Most of the time, it's petulant girl who's punching people because she's angry. And the weird thing about that is the whole Red Lantern thing is the rings they tap into your anger, and that's what gives you power. So it's odd that it's working oppositely for her, even though at the beginning it made her very rageful. But now it seems like she's making her more willing to control her anger and better apt at handling that anger in situations where she's trying to be diplomatic and trying to be a hero, which maybe is what she needed, and maybe having this Red Lantern ring for however long she's going to have it is what's going to kind of calm her down finally.
Which is ironic in that way. But yeah, Supergirl number 31, still tapping into the Red Lantern story, and it is an interesting character study for Supergirl, with that whole rage thing being really something that she's dealt with the whole time in the New 52 from issue number 1 onwards, and the fact that the Red Lantern ring itself is teaching her to deal with that anger is ironic in some ways, but also interesting for the character's growth. And we do know that down the track she will be discarding that Red Lantern ring, and it will be interesting to see how her character has grown, how her personality has changed after this saga.
Very interesting. I'm liking the way she's acting now that she's got the ring under control, much more than I liked the way she acted before she got the ring to begin with.
Now, we saw in upcoming solicitations that DC Comics released for September that Superboy number 34 will be the final issue of that title, which is a bit surprising considering that, we're having killed off Con-El with the whole, Return to Krypton or Krypton Returns storyline a few months ago, and bringing in John Lane Kent, who's taken over the Superboy, mantle, nefariously with his own plans and doing everything there. That so the few issues down the track that'll be it, kaput, finished, done. Superboy number 30. Superboy will be finished with number 34.
I don't know how closely you have looked at the sales numbers for these books. I feel like, from what I've heard and from what I have seen, Superman himself doesn't sell that well. Superman's staying alive mainly because he's Superman. The book's still selling because he has that name. But Superboy hasn't sold well since the very first time they tried to give Superboy his own comic after the death of Superman. They had Superboy comics back in the Silver Age, but I'm talking about the version of Superboy that's a clone or whatever he is. Every time you look at it, it was either relaunched or canceled every single time. They're trying as hard as they can, and I just think this was a very bad effort in terms of trying. I mean, I haven't enjoyed the story really at all. As I'm caught up now, I do find it becoming a little more interesting. As I was mentioning last month, and I did a great Scott on the subject, and that is that it's a little odd to me that a villain is the main star of Superboy, and that he is Superboy at the moment. And it does seem like what I thought was going to happen when I heard Superboy was going to end with 34 was that Con-El was going to come back and defeat this Superboy, and we were going to see a reset of that timeline that had been causing all the issues or whatever. Now it almost seems like they want to end the title with John actually becoming a hero, because it seems more and more like he's doing things a little like Supergirl, but Supergirl wasn't a murderous, character like this guy is. But it seems more and more like he, even though he has these machinations going on in his head and he's trying to control people and get them to do what he wants, it also seems like he's trying to do things that help people more than he was before, and it almost seems like he's doing it not for an alternative motive. So it looks almost like they're going to try and redeem him somehow by the end of 34, as opposed to where I thought they were going to go, and that was going to be with the resurrection of Khan. So I'm not sure how this is going to go, but it got more interesting than it was a little while ago, which is odd because I was kind of against the son of Superman being such an evil guy.
So sad to see that title die. It would have been nice if it had continued on with good stories, but I guess the writing was on the wall from the sales and from the storyline that was put out there from the very beginning. It being a living weapon and all that kind of stuff just kind of really didn't sit with people. And I don't think being tied to the Teen Titans it did him any favors, even though that title was selling better than Superboy. But that's probably because of the fact that it's got so many characters in there that it just pulls in different readers from the different characters themselves. So team up books or team books are going to always sell well if they've got popular characters all included in the one book. But there it is, Superboy number 34 in September will be the final issue of that title. No word yet if it will be relaunched somewhere down the track, but we do now only have something like 30-something titles, no longer, or 30, I think it's 39 instead of 52, which is what the new 52 was based on.
Right, yeah, a lot of things got canceled, and they haven't added as many as they've taken away, so... As you say, we don't even have 52 anymore. I thought 52 was way too many when they first launched. I thought there's no way they're going to be able to sustain 52.
I'm sure they can find 5 more Batman issues they could put in there.
Right. Well, I mean, they could. If those are the ones that are selling, and it may hurt us to say it as Superman fans, for a long time, I don't believe Superman books have been selling all that well. But they keep them there. Occasionally an issue does well, or it does well enough to keep 20. It going. But Batman is definitely the most popular, and all of those books sell almost just as well and better than the Superman books.
Well, it will be interesting to see what Jeff Johns and John Romita Jr. can do for Superman with Superman number issue 32.
Oh, my God.
Whether or not that's
now that you bring that up, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. The art alone makes me want to burn the book before I even have it in my hands. And these are superstar artists. And I thought John Romita Jr. was supposed to be a great artist. The stuff they're showing me there, it looks like a kid drew it. And it's a horrible story about Titano or whatever, the robotic. But who still wants to read those types of stories? I don't know. Maybe they feel like somebody does, and that's going to pick up the numbers. I thought, and Jeff Johns came up with this whole Forever Evil, and he's written most of the Justice League story up till this point, and I really enjoyed it. I maybe having read it in one sitting like that, I don't know how I'm going to do it now that I'm caught up. I'm waiting a whole month to see what's going to happen with Lex at Batman's door, but I'm just surprised that, and maybe the story will be great, and it doesn't matter what the artwork is, because maybe Jeff Johns can tell a good story as he's done with this whole 3-year catch-up I just did in 2 days. But wow, that really gave me doubts as to how it's going to help the book.
Oh, we'll wait and see how it ends up once it's actually published and out there in our hands. All right, let's move away from our comic book discussion, and I wanted to mention this Superman Hall of Heroes initiative. It was launched early in May in Times Square in New York City, with a number of real-life people, real-life heroes being recognized and inducted into the inaugural class of the Superman Hall of Heroes. Matthew Reeve, son of Christopher Reeve, was there to represent his father, who was inducted into the Superman Hall of Heroes. It honours everyday heroes, people who make a positive difference in the lives of others, and I think it's a great initiative. I'm glad to see Superman connected with it. It's got the Superman logo. The statues that they all received as awards were great looking Superman statues and awards. And you can check out the website at supermanhallofheroes.com and nominate someone in your life or in your community who you think is making a real difference in people's lives.
I think it's great. I'm surprised, with the lack of popularity that Superman is supposed to have, that such a large thing is happening in connection with the character, and obviously his symbol and the idea of him is still one of the most well known throughout the world. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's why it's connected, and I think it's a great, awesome thing, and it'll be good for New York, and it'll be good for tourism, and when I go there, I'll certainly check it out. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. So. The Superman Hall of Heroes, as I said, supermanhallofheroes.com, and you can nominate someone in your community, in your life, who is making a difference in real life situations. So it's great to see there were people like Brad Globe, Robin Rosenberger, Jeff Chobano, David Burke, Della Britton Baser, Alana Nichols, Salvatore Cassano, Matthew Reeve, as I mentioned, Dick Hoyt, Rick Hoyt, and Salvatore Giante, who were all inducted into that inaugural class of the Hall of Superman Hall of Heroes, and you can find out more about them at that website. Before we move into the big question segment, Scotty, the Superman celebration is on next month in June 12th to June 15th. It will be on before we get around to our next podcast, so we should mention that if you do want to get to the Superman celebration, head to supermancelebration.net to find out all the details about what's going on in Metropolis, Illinois. Scotty and I have both been there. I've been there 3 times. Scotty was there in 2008. And it is a fantastic event. If you're a Superman fan, you should get there. It's got a real festival feel to it. It's something that's you'll enjoy. There's lots to see. Dean Cain's there this year, as is what's his name from the Star Wars movies?
I just call him Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, Billy D. Williams,
Miss Tessmacher,
Valerie Perrine, and who else am I forgetting?
Aaron Smolinski.
Elliot S. Magan, a number of other artists and writers in Artist Alley and Writers Way to check out. There's a costume contest, there's an auction, there's all different things going on there. It is a real fantastic 4-day festival, and the Superman homepage meet and greet will be happening on the Friday morning at 10:30 a.m. at the Hardee's restaurant there, not far from the Superman statue. There'll be DVDs and Blu-rays of Superman movies and animated films to give away. There'll be a free Superman homepage button that everyone will get. There'll be a trivia quiz happening there. All kinds of stuff happening at the Superman homepage, meet and greet. You get to meet all the people that you see on the website, put face to a name, and just have a good time for an hour there at the Hardee's restaurant with the Superman homepage meet and greet.
Sounds great, and it's only like 2 weeks away. It's amazing.
So supermancelebration.net for further details. All right, let's move into the big question segment of the show.
Let's start with the big question.
Last month's big question was, what are your thoughts on Superman, Batman, and Captain America going head-to-head for the same release date? And Martin Gray wrote in, firstly, I can't see that happening, but if they do, so what? People can go to more than one film in a period of a few weeks. Let's not get too hung up on a supposed rivalry. If films are good, they'll find big audiences.
Yep, next up we had Donovan Hunter, who writes in saying, I don't think it's going to happen. Both movies are too big to release on the same day. There aren't enough screens for both movies. Both movies can't release in IMAX. Both movies would hurt each other financially at the box office. There's so much at stake. That's why I think one of them will move off that day, May 6, 2016. But if it does happen, it will be the best weekend ever. Thank you, Steve and Scotty. Keep up the awesome work. Thanks, Donovan.
Guthrie McLean wrote, I can't believe these 2 films will release on the same date, and not one will have its date postponed. But why would you want to have 2 big superhero franchises released on the same date? That's insane. I'd fear that one will beat the other at the box office. However, when I first heard that Bats vs. Supes and Cap 3 would release on the same day, I thought, that won't be a problem. Batman and Superman, that's huge, no contest. But after I saw Captain America 2, I was impressed. So now, I'm a little concerned.
Yep, fair enough. Ricky Lee James writes in, he says, I think it would be insane for any movie to go up against the first live-action team-up we've ever had between Superman and Batman. I personally love Captain America and thought Part 2 was a masterpiece, but it's still no competition for Man of Steel and The Dark Knight. Honestly, it would keep me from seeing Captain America 3 because I don't get to patronise movie theatres all that often. To have them both open simultaneously would ensure I won't see Cap 3 in a theatre. Spread it out, and I would. Well, there's almost an answer to Guthrie's concerns there about Captain America 2 being so good. Ricky Lee James doesn't think that it has would have any bearing because he would rather see Superman and Batman first.
There it is. Argent L wrote, Hey, Steve and Scotty, Superman 2 and Captain America 3 movies premiering on the same day. What a dilemma for all of us who visit at the Superman Captain America homepage. Frankly, I think there's no contest after all. It is Superman. Oh, and throw in another minor character like Batman, Wonder Woman, and Cyborg as a bonus. Stamp my ticket at DC.
Thank you, Argent L. Very good. Well, that was the answers to our big question segment this month. What's our new big question, Scotty, for next month's podcast?
Well, I would expect we're going to have a number of answers to this one based on what I've heard already. But the question is, what do you think of the title Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice?
Yes, Scotty and I have given our opinions earlier in the show. Now it's your turn to let loose. Get involved with the big question segment of our show by clicking on the big question button found at the Superman homepage and send us your response to this question, what you think of the title Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And we will read out those answers in our next podcast. And don't forget, you can also record an audio answer and send that in as an MP3 file, and we will play that here on Radio KAL.
Always fun to hear your own voice on the radio show, so go ahead and get recording. And now it's time for the Superman comedy sketch.
I'm laughing at you, you hear? Laughing!
And this month we have another sketch from CBC Radio's The Irrelevant Show. We featured a few of their sketches on Superman on our podcast. And this time around we have a little sketch involving the world of Lego and Superman.
The Irrelevant Show proudly presents the Lego Superman movie.
Hey, Lego Superman.
Oh, hey, Lego Batman.
You look depressed. What is it?
I was just thinking about my home planet Krypton and feeling sad that it blew up when I was a baby.
Why don't you just put it back together?
Sorry, what?
Well, it's made of Lego. Just put it back together.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Lego Batman. That's a great idea.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, hey, Lego Batman. While I'm rebuilding my planet, you should put your parents back together.
Holy, that is a great idea.
Not so fast, Lego Superman. I, Lego Lex Luthor, will use my Lego laser to destroy Metropolis, and your lady loves Lego Lois Lane and Lego Lana Lang. You will pay for making me bald, everything and everyone you love. Hey, my hair clicked right back on. I look great.
I finished building my parents.
Krypton is back together.
I'm ready to lead a productive life.
Wow, this is like the best day ever.
So, what do we do now? We don't really have any problems to solve.
Nope.
So...
This has been the Lego Superman movie in its entirety.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.
There you have it. Funny stuff, just putting together Krypton again because it's just made out of Lego.
Well, it's very easy when you got Lego bricks. Rebuild anything.
Let's and we are short on some of these comedy sketches. There aren't that many around there. So if you do know of something out there that you want us to play here on the show, please feel free to email us and let us know. We're happy for suggestions and for some requests on any comedy sketches involving Superman that you might know of.
Now it's time for the super secret Sound-Byte. Last month's sound came from the pilot episode of the Justice League animated series, Secret Origins.
Yeah, let's hear that sound now so that we can remind people what it was.
And I solemnly swear to all of you that I will continue to uphold the ideals of truth and justice, not just for America, but for all the world.
There you have it. And who got it right this month?
Well, only two people guessed where it came from, and those people were Fred Walsh and Dave Booth.
Congratulations, Fred and Dave. Well done for guessing
Good job.
where that came from. Let's see if more people can guess where in the world of Superman this new super secret soundbite comes from.
You're supposed to be grounded, both figuratively and literally.
Well, have you any ideas where that sound might have come from? Where in the world of Superman did we take that sound from? Well, if you do know, if you want to have a guess, use the super secret soundbite entry form found at the website and send your entry in. Each person who guesses it right will have their name read out here on Radio KAL.
It's time now for the Superman song, which is Bye Bye Superman from Geyster from their 2004 album I Love 1984.
Yeah, check it out. It's an interesting one. Bye Bye Superman by Geyster.
talking to you, Jennifer Carson is safe and alive, back from an unusual trip. Earlier today, around 2 p.m., she fell through the window of her 59th floor apartment at the corner of 82nd Street and Metro Avenue. Believe it or not, but some kind of flying man just came out of the blue, right on time to rescue her from the fall. This flying hero is called Superman. This is John Clay for Radio Geyster International.
Well, there you have it. That's the song. That's our show. It's been an interesting one. We've had a lot of comic book discussions this month, more than usual, but a lot to get through, and really enjoyed our discussions this month. Scotty, remember, everyone out there, if you do have a topic that you think Scotty and I need to discuss, maybe there is a song you'd like to request, if you have a comedy sketch, as I mentioned, that you'd like us to play here, or any other ideas for our show, we're happy to hear from you. You can use the KAL feedback form found at the Superman homepage, or you can send us an email directly. My email address is steve@supermanhomepage.com, or you can email scotty@supermanhomepage.com, and we will endeavour to use those ideas in a future show. But for now, that is our show for this month. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Scotty.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks, everybody. And remember, I've got Batman v Superman repellent spray in my pants.
You've been listening to Radio KAL, brought to you by supermanhomepage.com.